Hi, friends. Welcome to a new segment and a double debut day. So, just in case this is your first time stumbling across me, I'm Safrianna Luna, the Queer Spirit Guide. I'm an internationally best-selling author and speaker and all kinds of things. I'm just a multi-passionate creative in general. So, I am so delighted to share today two major things. Like I said, a double debut. So today we are kicking off this segment, The Shadow Side with Safrianna, which is going to be my ongoing both solo and guest segment moving forward, as well as the launch of Daddy's Girl. It's so fresh that I really only have my not for resale copy here. Print copies are available today and now on Amazon. So, again, welcome. Today, I want to kind of just go over what this new shadow side segment is going to be, and then I am going to be reading a little bit from Daddy's Girl this morning from the preface of why it was time to finally share this book. And then I'll see you back here later today for another reading. So I've been sitting, just in case you don't know the history, my wife, Ikenna, and I founded Living Luna, our brand, in January of 2021. So our brand has been here for a few years now, going on 4 years. And that same year, we began our podcast. And once we started our podcast, I really realized how much I loved being on podcasts. And season 2 of Living Lunas, we started interviewing guests and we were having some fun with it, but it just wasn't quite right for what we wanted to do there. So I kicked off in late 2022 a new segment called Soul Connection Calls, where it was just me and a guest, and I was interviewing people. And again, it was a lot of fun, but it didn't feel like it had a cohesive, solid purpose. So that brought me to the end of towards the end of 2024 here, where I really have been sitting with, what's next and what is this next big chapter for me. And I realized it was the shadow side. So if you're familiar with me, I'm all about the shadows. If you're new to my world, I am a licensed trauma therapist and I've been doing all kinds of shadow work and spiritual shadow work for years now. It's a big passion of mine. And I want to talk about it more. I want to bring more shadow conversations to the forefront and unpack what it is, because when I've talked about the shadow and the light, one of the biggest things that I've gotten is people saying, well, the shadow is bad and you don't want that. And I'm like, no, that's actually false. We need the shadow. We need to talk about it. We actually need it to maximize and go with our full human flow, which is in and out of light and shadow. And so it's become even more apparent to me over the last few years how important it is to have conversations around the shadow and the light and what it is and what it isn't and what it all means, so that people can have a more balanced and healthy relationship with these personal elements. So that's what this segment is about. I will be interviewing guests. I actually have a guest on tomorrow, Karen Foote. Super excited about that. We're going to be talking about spiritual awakening. You will see me solo on here more often. If there is a topic you want me to cover, let me know. I have a list somewhere in my little to-do bundle that is all these topics that you and other people who have watched my content have submitted in terms of topics they'd like me to talk on. So all of that will be coming forward in the future. So the shadow side, I hope, will be an exciting new segment that will really just deepen the conversations, give them that focal point, right? When I'm inviting a guest on, that we're really doing something more profound and more subtle and energetic and important for collective healing, as well as having an open-hearted, soul-led conversation. So nothing's going to change there. Again, just that focal point that we're going to be addressing the shadows more directly. We're going to be talking more deeply about some uncomfortable topics. I'm all about it. So speaking of which, the double debut Daddy's Girl is out today. You can go to tinyurl.com/DG for Daddy's Girl poems, and that will take you straight to the Amazon page. You can, of course, go on Amazon and search for Daddy's Girl, but you're going to get a bunch of books that are not this. That's a fun thing. You are looking for the Memoir in Poetry by Safrianna Luna. So be sure that you're looking for that, or again, just use a direct link. If you're ever like, I want to know the latest on Safrianna's books, you can go to safrianna.com/author, and that will show you all of my books and all of the links to those. So know where he's there. And I'm going to read from the preface today of Daddy's Girl because this is our big debut day. This is actually, so this was a pre-sale, pre-launch copy, and there is not a lot of changes that have been made, but some subtle changes. So if you get your own physical copy of the book, it'll look a lot like this, but there have been some little tweaks. And otherwise, I get to read my preface with all of my little notes because this was the last copy. You can actually see where I decided to change some of the prose writing last second, but the poems are pretty untouched. Between the pre-launch and post-launch copies, there were not a lot of changes that I needed to make in this. The whole process of this book was a lot of fun and a lot of shadow work. I'll be talking more about that this evening when I go live for a second time, but this really forced me to confront some shadows and bring stuff back to the surface. It forced me to look at my relationship with the masculine energies and principles in the world. It was a lot of soul searching to bring this book forward. And, I started writing this in 2021 when I heard the news that my father was actively dying from cancer. And he'd already had a recovery, and he and I didn't have much of a relationship. So I started writing this book when I was kind of sucked back into my childhood, sucked back into the parental dynamics I'd been raised in and the expectations and being the eldest daughter and all of that. So this memoir is really about me uncoupling from that energy and coming into a new way of being. Thank you so much, Isis, for the congratulations. Yeah, this book, my first poetry book, A Woman's Work, it really opened me into a new level of being, expressing myself fully and sharing some really vulnerable things about my past, my traumas. And then this book was even more vulnerable in some ways because even though I'd already done that work, I'd already put myself out there, I'd already publicized so much of my story. This was really pulling in more of my family, my father, my sister, my mother, just like my bigger family constellation. And of course, I did receive some kickback that this book maybe shouldn't come out. And I'll talk more about that later today too, but I knew it was important, and that's what I want to speak on today. So again, I'm going to read from the preface, why it was time to share Daddy's Girl. It's been about 3 years since I started writing it, and here it is in print finally. So why was it time to share Daddy's Girl? The curse of generational trauma has pervaded our planet for so long that it seems hardly any of us can imagine a better way. Our health and closeness are in crisis from bloodlines continually passing down unhealthy behaviors and systems. There is enough pain from natural disasters, illness, and death. We don't need to create more suffering for one another, yet we do. One of the most common wounds I've witnessed in my years as a teacher, therapist, and guide are familial wounds created in relationships with our parents or childhood caregivers. Almost everyone I've held space for has shared a story of their elders harming them in some way. Emotional neglect, not making space for children's feelings, emotional abuse, such as the all too common stop crying or I'll give you something to cry about, no room for self expression, lack of autonomy given, pushing children to do what they don't want to do, birth time trauma and/or adoption and separation trauma, sexual trauma or stories of not being believed or protected from exploitation, being forced into caregiving and reversed parent child roles early and without consent or understanding, neglect in all forms, poverty, and lack of access to basic survival needs. I could retell hundreds of stories of pain and suffering caused by humans being inconsiderate of their impact on others. By avoiding looking at their unprocessed pain, it pours out in their behaviors, how they treat their loved ones and community, how they handle triggers, grief, shame, disappointment, and fear. I've seen and heard so much trauma from my clients and students that I could fill volumes on it. However, Daddy's Girl isn't a collection of case studies. It's a raw, honest telling of my perspective, of my relationship with my father, and the complex grief I experienced in his passing. Through that, I found myself over time, unpacked my patterns of overgiving of myself, and reclaimed my voice. Daddy's Girl is my story, my snapshot of the intersections of our lives and the circumstances that forged me in shimmering steel. It's important to me to acknowledge that as I write, I am always writing from my perspective. I can't account for others' thoughts and feelings, and anywhere I express things about others or a situation, it's my view. I have dealt with dissociation through much of my life, and bits and pieces of my memories have come and gone with various traumas, moments of peace and awareness. And all of my writing, I keep any people still living intentionally vague. I see people who have passed as humans with their own complex, often messy lives. For both living and dead, I forgive and release all contracts and mutual burdens held between us. That includes my late father, who, as you'll uncover, I had a very challenging relationship with. I wrote 47 of my 79 poems in Daddy's Girl during the period of time when my father was rapidly declining and continued drafting until months after his death. I began writing sometime around when I helped him with his will and then created in a flurry after my final hospital visit. Then I took my final trip back to New York to desperately attempt to salvage my father's estate while my other parents made demands. My sister and I were still in shock and recovering from so much damn trauma. And instead of taking a collective breather and time to mourn, I endured the klaxon call of compulsory codependent behaviors and generational stories constantly blaring in my ears. It was not a good time. While I'm okay with it all now, I was also deeply impacted by it too. This project helped me process, honor, and release these wounds for myself and others. Like many of our fathers, unfortunately tangled up in patriarchal bullshit, my father struggled with sexism, racism, biphobia, transphobia, substance abuse, and treated various people in his life in unsupportive ways. He also slowly killed himself at work and threw his all into trying to be a provider in a financial sense, though he never seemed to have any money. He was complicated, and I will never know his full story. But it's time to speak my story, and now. Too many of us are wounded children grown into broken-hearted adults. We wander seeking connection, understanding, and love. If we're brave, we can find it as we heal from the painful separateness that we felt when we were younger. We've survived collective traumas, many of which we still remember, and even more we don't. If we had better relationships with our fathers, if our fathers had better relationships with their fathers and mothers, if the generational chain was not tarnished from centuries of families bleeding rust, imagine life then. These sorts of pains, the vulnerable, most private pains of childhood, can only be resolved through communication, compassion, curiosity, and boundaries. Unfortunately, boundaries are impossible to set when we are children if we are around unhealthy adults. A child truly has no say in what they endure, save to try and run away or tell another adult. They don't have a car or the knowledge of how to look up and call for services. They might not even have access to outward communication at all. But as adults, there are more possibilities. As adults, we may be stuck in many of the same patterns perpetuated in our childhoods, and fresh cycles created in complex, often codependent adult relationships. We may be terrified to draw boundaries, to say no, or to remove ourselves from situations that hurt, because that's what we're used to. We often reenact childhood dynamics, trying to prove we can fix the pain. But that's not how it works. So long as we stay silent, the same swirls of shame and fear will haunt us, and I shall stay silent and stuck no more. I stand with survivors of generational trauma in solidarity, raising a rallying cry for better for us all. It's going to take communication, compassion, curiosity, and presence to move to create better, but I believe we can do it. I believe we can heal ourselves and thus the world. Thank you for picking up this book and for going on my journey of grief with me. May this collection of poems bring you closer to yourself and deepen your care for each other. All my love. So that is the preface of Daddy's Girl. Then it launches into my acknowledgments, my dedication, and then right into the poems. And Oh, it is a deep and meaningful collection to me and to the readers who have read it. Every review that has already come in, every bit of feedback has just been tremendous. And I'm so happy to share it with the world. So, if you are someone like me who has hashtag daddy issues or mommy issues or family issues, know that you are not alone, that we are healing from this complex journey of generational trauma together. And it's not easy, right? It is so much of what the collective has known. It is so much of what has been here for us to digest and be with. It's been our status quo for so freaking long. And I'm here to move on. I'm here to move into better. I'm here to call up a better world for all of us where we don't have to be in fear of harm and violence and not being believed. And that's what I speak on, and that's what I am here for. So, know that again, you're not alone. If you've experienced these things, I am loving you. I am sending you all the good vibes. And if you want to read the whole collection, again, it is on Amazon. You can go to tinyurl.com/DG poems. I will put that link in the chat so that you have it. And otherwise, reach out, like share. If you grab the poetry collection, I'd love to know what poems speak out to you. I would love to know, what is really alive in it as you read it. I would love to support as you read it, whatever comes up. I am just I'm here to share the truth and to stop being silent in the face of the truth, and to know that each and every single one of us has a worthy story that is here to be shared. And let those stories be ones of hope and expansion and possibility, instead of continued stories of pain and fear and disappointment and shame and just so much suffering and pain. So I'm here to call in better with you. Um, Again, thank you for your support. I will be back again live today to read from the end of the book, the Q&A portion, and just to talk a little bit more in depth about the shadows of my father and looking back on that relationship. This morning was really just a teaser and the double debut. So thanks for those of you who joined me live, those that joined in the replay. I am sending you so much love, and I will